So is Sam Darnold like broken or what's going on there? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. So thank you all for coming and hanging out. Thank you to anybody here who is new, who's just hopping in, going, oh my God, the Vikings are 5-0. Maybe I should go find some Vikings podcasts. You have come to the right place. You can find Locked On Vikings wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Just search it out on whatever your favorite podcast listening app is. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. It's Twitter Tuesday. That means I'm taking your questions as submitted to me via the Google form in the show notes or by email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. I will always put out a call on Twitter as well on Monday morning sometime usually. First one I'm going to answer today, and the first several are all about Sam Darnold, the offense, kind of what went wrong with the offense in London against the Jets. In addition to, good defense, maybe London weirdness, all that stuff. But what was the deal? So the first question is pretty direct. Skeptical Skull asks, what happened to the passing game? Darnold seemed super inaccurate. So the inaccuracy is interesting. I think that you can see mechanically the causes of all of the inaccuracies, but I don't know. And I'm going to look into this a little closer and make a Patreon video. So at patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL, keep an eye out for that. I don't know if there's like a specific thing, right? Like it's not like you could see with Jordan Love last week, where you could see something with the way that he stepped into throws was a little bit ginger and different. And that meant he didn't quite get the right torque on it. And then that's going to spray him. This was, sometimes he didn't get his hips all the way through. And this is something that Sam Darnold does sometimes when he feels there's pressure in his face, right? If there's like a guy in his lap, he can't step into the throw, he isn't as good as some other quarterbacks as like kind of forcing his hips to torque the way they want him to. And then he just kind of wings it because he's got a lot of arm talent. And that will cause some inaccuracy. But I will say there are a lot of factors. Sometimes the throw was accurate and it was just that the cornerback was all over it. Sometimes, a guy would slip later in the game, like after halftime. Basically, everybody went into the locker room and that miss just kind of kept falling. And the turf got very slick. This is not, I don't think, a turf that they're very used to. I think I said soccer pitch on the Minnesota Football Party. That was wrong. It's turf. It's like a special turf for the NFL that is like brought in by that stadium. But I don't know how similar it is or how built for the weather that kind of technology is. And you could tell that both teams were having a lot of trouble with their footing. And so sometimes a receiver would slip, a D-back would slip. Some of those quote-unquote inaccurate balls would have been accurate were it not for a hook or a tug that would then get flagged for holding or illegal contact. But there were also some decisions that I thought were ill-advised. There's an unblocked sack off the edge where Sam Darnold kind of has to understand that he's hot. There was he was taking the alert a lot. So in a lot of these O'Connell progressions, and this is true of any McVay, Shanahan scheme, McDaniel, LaFleur, you name it. Kubiak now, Clint Kubiak. You're going to have an alert, which is usually like a clear out or something that's a distraction, something that's not really in the progression, but is just there to like stress the coverage in a certain way, open something up for something else. But a lot of these will have you peek at it right away. Just make sure they didn't bust a coverage. In fact, one of those was the Nick Mullins pass. When he came in and he threw that one to Aaron Jones, in mesh, the way I understand most iterations of mesh, you're going to have some kind of clear out on the outside to occupy one of the deep defenders to help the math work out elsewhere in the rep. And if they just screw up and forget to cover that guy, you probably want to throw that touchdown, right? So you peek at it. And the player on Aaron Jones, Quincy Williams, he actually totally dusted him on the release. It was awesome. And it looked like it would have been a touchdown. So Nick Mullins takes it and he lays it up a little bit short. And so Aaron Jones has to jump into it. Ends up getting hurt on that play, by the way. But like, that's an alert. And Darnold took the alert basically anytime he saw one-on-one with any corner. And Jefferson just didn't win those contested catches. So there was a lot of, even I think deep enough into the game where you had enough information to know, hey, this isn't working, but Darnold just kind of kept chucking it. And that becomes a conversation between quarterback and coach. Does coach even dislike that? Maybe he still is saying, no, we're going to get one of these one-on-ones. You keep trying it. Let's keep trying it. Or is this just like some habit that he couldn't break or something? But I thought whatever it was, I thought that decision was excessive, whether it was Darnold's or O'Connell's. I thought that it was excessive, especially considering the game situation a lot of those occurred in. Secret Sauce Enthusiast says, rewatched the condensed version this morning, and that Jets D made a lot of plays. Anything schematic to be concerned about, or is the silver lining that we won't face another D this good until the playoffs? So here's going to be my take on this. Y'all aren't going to like it. I think this is the first team that I've noticed since probably Jefferson's rookie year that truly just kind of kicked his ass. Jefferson took an L on this one. And we've had other games where Jefferson's been, shut down, where he's been shut out of the game, only 15 yards or whatever. Those have been schematic, those are, he's getting bracketed, he's getting doubled, he's getting guys all over him, they're blitzing, he's had games where he's totally disappeared, but it's because the quarterback couldn't get the throw off because of pressure, some O-line disaster. We've seen a lot of those things over the last few years with Jefferson, but I have never seen that, not since his rookie year, when he wasn't really, when he was still coming on, didn't even know the playbook, right? Not since his rookie year have I ever seen a team truly man-to-man him. Very often, no safety help. This is not a Jair Alexander situation. This was true, straight up, manned up, follow him over the field, clamps. Never seen another team do that, and I don't think we're going to see a team do that again. I think only the Jets can do that with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. And by the way, Reed's a free agent after the year, so probably won't be able to anymore. Never seen that before. You guys, that is an incredible performance. And for the first time in 4 years, Jefferson took an L. And Addison took a worse L, and Naylor took an L as well. So schematically, no, I don't think they unlocked the secret key. They manned up a lot of the time. They cover one it. And they had the dudes to do it. I hope that answers the basic vibe. There's a couple more angles on this that you guys actually asked about, so I'm going to keep going on that next, as well as the rest of your questions here on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The Vikings continue to climb in Super Bowl odds, plus 1,200 now at FanDuel. And if you want to throw a quick couple of bucks on that, you can go ahead and do so. You can also grab the Vikings right now as 3-point underdogs in their match at home against the Lions coming up in a couple of weeks, or you can wait to see how that line develops. Whatever it is, you can find it at FanDuel.com, which is America's best sportsbook for a reason. You can check back at FanDuel all the time to get all kinds of boosts and promos and special little things, so check back often. If you are getting started at FanDuel, you can put $5 down on whatever it is, and you will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, whether you win or lose that bet. So put it down on whatever spread you like, and over-under you like, some little side action you're looking for to stay engaged on the bye week when there isn't a Vikings game. Whatever it is that you want to do, put down $5, get your $200 in bonus bets, win or lose at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On Vikings is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. This is a show that starts every single day with the fact that we are trying to learn something new all the time. And Hillsdale wants to help you achieve that goal. Not necessarily about football, but more about, say, history or economics. You can learn about the history of the Constitution, the inner workings of a free market economics, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, stuff that maybe you learned about in school, but you forgot about. And if you're interested in it again now, or you're just looking to expand your horizons, then check out Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. It is free. There's no cost. It's easy to get started at hillsdale.edu/lockedon. And you can get more than 40 free online courses about some of the stuff I mentioned and much, much more. Once again, that is hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Moving right along with this Twitter Tuesday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. The next question comes from Boban, who asks, do you think any of the ultra-aggressive play calls will naturally get fixed when Hockenson comes back? Seems like a lot of the easy stuff you've been talking about gets even easier having a security blanket tight end that you trust. I think absolutely, but what I will say is that they haven't shied away from the concepts that have usually been for Hockenson. A long one to Johnny Munt, that is very much for Hockenson, those kind of skinny posts. They've run Y choice with Josh Oliver. They've run that sort of double clear with the under as like a third and long thing, and they've just had Brandon Powell be the catch and run guy instead of TJ Hockenson. So they've run those things. I think those concepts get more consistent with Hockenson, and I also think it changes the texture of your run game a little, but not much, because they really haven't shied away from using Munt and Oliver the way that they want to use Hockenson. But I think it's just that, those guys aren't going to get separation as much, so you're going to move on from them in the progression when it is something that's on them, and so you're not going to see as much action from those guys as you will with Hockenson. Another Luke asks, how many games have the Vikings had all three of Jefferson, Addison, and Hockenson available, and can we tell anything from those games? So, gosh, like half of 2022, half of 2023, basically, right? Because Hockenson was only there halfway through 2022, and then in 2023, Jefferson misses half the season, and then Hockenson misses a couple at the end. So, yeah, really only a few games. And what we can tell is that they can sort of 49ers it at a certain point, where the 49ers, they've got their big three playmakers in Kittle, McCaffrey, Debo. And then Ayuk kind of emerged on that scene last year too, so maybe it's four. And when you go, fantasy players are frustrated by this all the time, because when you go into a 49ers game, it's someone's day, but we don't know who yet. Maybe it's a McCaffrey day. Maybe it's a Kittle day today. But next week, it'll be an Ayuk day. And you can kind of do that with the Vikings, where if they're going to let Justin Jefferson man up, and they don't have Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, then you can kind of say, okay, today's going to be a Jefferson day, and the other two guys are going to sort of fall by the wayside. But if Jefferson's getting doubled a bunch, we're going to get 120 yards out of Hockenson. And if they're going to, do enough where maybe they've got a tight end erasing safety and they can still double Jefferson, well, then Addison's going to take the top off of you. And you can sort of, you can rely on the fact that at least one of them will be having the day. And if you can shut down all three of them at a time, you get to beat the Vikings, but that's a much taller order. Scully Polly asks, what adjustments, if any, do you notice from KOC's play calling when having a lead? From 2022 in the past 2 weeks, playing with a lead has been a huge problem. There isn't. So this is the deal. This is something that you're just going to have to decide whether you like about O'Connell or not, and you have to accept that it's not going to change. He is not going to not be aggressive with a lead. It's just not going to happen. It's not who he is. It's not the philosophy that he has taken to coaching, and it's not the philosophy that got him to this position, and it's not the philosophy that got him to a record of, what would it be if they were 7-10 last year, 13-20? So what's that? 23 or 25 wins in the first 3 years so far. Like this is the philosophy that got him there, that he is not going to leave. Maybe we want him to, but he is not going to do it. He's just going to keep doing this. And if that means giving up a bunch of leads, that means giving up a bunch of leads, but maybe also sometimes you get 34-7 on somebody. What you need to do is hit those explosives when you go for them. But this is just who Kevin O'Connell is. And I don't really agree with it. I think that it's a pretty bad idea, and I think he should find more balance, but I don't think he's gonna. I think he's just going to be defiant about that. And I guess so be it. That's who he is. What I don't want to hear, though, is frustration about Kevin O'Connell turtling, because if he ever does get like a 2-score lead and then it goes like run to like kill some clock, we have to be like, okay, that's kind of what we're asking from you. It's like not complaining about Sam Darnold when he checks it down, but he maybe could have taken a risky one. It's like, but for you, we can be okay with the safe thing. Maybe if it was somebody else, if it was Kirk, if it was a rookie that we don't have these priors on, then maybe we would go, but could you have taken that chance down the field? But for Sam Darnold, we're happy with a check down. For Kevin O'Connell, maybe we're happy if you like look up at the clock and realize that you're in a situational thing here, especially for Mr. Situational Masters. I think that the critique goes down to that's not situational mastery. And for somebody who preaches it, you aren't practicing it. And that's a pretty bad look. I don't think he agrees with me. I don't think he thinks that it's wrong. Gross Michelle says, the Vikings come into the bye 5-0, but with concerns around overly aggressive offensive play. Are there any ways for KOC to send a message to a team about hubris and the dooms that befall those guilty of it? I don't think he wants to. I mean, sure, right? Like, if you and I can understand that hubris is probably bad and that there's like such thing as a heat check, right? You get up 3 touchdowns and then you go for a 4th and that one becomes the interception that changes the game. Maybe you could have just run duo. Like, if we can understand that, they can understand that, but it's a matter of they don't agree. And we have to be respectful of that. They don't see it the same way we see it. It's not unlike when, Mike Zimmer wanted to run the ball more all the time. It's like, okay, maybe we don't think that's correct, but he does. He has the power, and we don't really get to expect him to make a change that he doesn't agree with. We can sit here and say, I think he should make that change, and that's perfectly valid for us to say, but we can't go to but maybe he's just not getting through to the players, because it almost assumes that what we think is a universal truth, and there's hubris to that we have to be careful of as well. Stezo asks, should the Vikings look to add a running back to the positions to the position room to give Chandler competition at running back 2, which is actually kind of answered by the next question, Eric the Red. Can I simply write off the sloppy performance on offense as a result of the field conditions and time zone change and enjoy the bye week, knowing that nothing's actually wrong with this team? Yes, absolutely, Eric the Red. Cook. So here's what I'm going to say about Ty Chandler. I didn't like the game. A lot of his bad play in this game felt like he couldn't get his footing. He couldn't get the traction and that he needed to really push off of the turf and like generate powerful burst. And he's been better about that this year. So if we're going to talk about benching Ty Chandler and we got to send a draft pick to someone so we can get a better running back too, because it's such a panicky thing. Somebody asked me on Twitter, I was like, you guys panic about everything. He's got a hip flexor deal. It sounds like he maybe will be out for like a couple weeks, and you guys are like ready to send draft picks the Vikings don't have for like running backs that are going to hit free agency after the year. It's like, we don't chill. Just relax. We don't need to change the roster every time something teeters a little bit off the tightrope. Backups are there for a reason. If they didn't think that Ty Chandler could take the mantle if Aaron Jones went down, they would have done this differently on 53-man cut down day or over the offseason. And if they find themselves in a position where Ty Chandler is going to start a game and they're so uncomfortable with that they have to throw a draft pick out, then they failed at roster building. Backups are here for a reason. When a starter goes down, your backup plan is not to start spending draft picks willy-nilly. Guys get injured all the time. Next man up mentality is a cliche for a reason. So please stop telling me that they have to trade for a guy every time one guy gets injured. I get this question every single time someone gets injured. It is not sound logic, and it's not how teams operate. When a guy gets injured, the backup will play. That's what backups are for. If you don't like him for that job, he probably shouldn't have it. And guess what? They pretty willfully let Ty Chandler have this with no competition. So they feel good about it. And I don't think a slip slide game in London is going to change their minds very much. Believe it or not, you guys actually wanted to ask about stuff that wasn't the offensive woes of the Jets game. So we'll answer all the rest of your questions next on Locked On Vikings. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by Gametime. It's the best place to find last-minute tickets, and it's a great way to solve the age-old question, what do you want to do tonight? Because if you're feeling spontaneous, you maybe want to go to an event, but who's going to get last-minute tickets? That's what Gametime is kind of built for, and they actually have curation, so just go browse the thing. They will curate not only stuff that is, in your area that you're going to like, but it makes it easier to save because they can pull from a wider pool of possible tickets to really find the things that are only going to be a good deal to attend. So if you're looking for a great way to spend a Saturday night or something, whether it's a sporting event, like you want to go maybe try a Lynx playoff game if you want to get spicy with it, or an upcoming Vikings home game, or a concert or a comedy show, or whatever it is, let Gametime take you on a journey. You can also toggle on all-in pricing, which means that you can see your full price at checkout up front. No surprise fees, no hidden shenanigans. shenanigans, nothing like that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Moving onward and upward with the Locked On Vikings podcast, Twitter Tuesday here going on. The next question comes from TC18, who asks, is Jerry Tillery actually a dog now? Kinda, man. So Jerry Tillery is the Dean Lowry that was promised. He is in the Dean Lowry role. That means that he's a base lineman. He's rotates in and out as a defensive lineman. He's not in on every play, and he comes off the field if you want to do four fronts more often than somebody like Jonathan Bullard will. And he does a lot of dirty work. This is what Dean Lowry did when he was with the Vikings last year. It was dirty work. He did a lot of crashing. He did a lot of sacrificial roles. He did a lot of just occupy your gap, and the running back's never going to come to you. A lot of unglamorous work, but the problem was that Dean Lowry actually failed at that work. Sometimes he would get washed out of that gap. He would fail to, properly influence the guard on the crash and stuff. And so I was not a big fan of Dean Lowry last year because that dirty work is unglamorous, but still very important, and you can still be good at it or bad at it. I think Jerry Tillery has been very good at it. And every once in a while, he will get a one-on-one and beat a guard. You would never get that out of Dean Lowry. So this is the same role. It's the same job that Lowry was doing, but he is definitely better at it. Thing is, when you ask him to be an every down player and do the harder jobs with a little bit more pressure on him, a little bit more weight on him, and therefore, they're higher leverage and they're also higher difficulty. Can he be that guy? His career has proven that that's probably not the thing you want to ask him to do. But hey, dirty work player Jerry Tillery, if you spent a first round pick on him, you're probably not that happy with it. But for the Vikings and what they spent on him, you're thrilled with it. Mario asks, how significant was the return of Ivan Pace to the defensive success against the Jets? Kamu had been doing a pretty good job, and Kamu actually still got some run, Kamu Grugier-Hill. So I think that if Pace needed more time, that probably would have been okay just because he's playing well enough. But my goodness gracious, Ivan Pace put up another one. That dude is having a year. And he had a couple that have made the rounds on social media where, ducking under guards. He actually had one where he just straight up pass rushed and beat a guard. Just like as if he were a 3-tech, just won the rep straight up one-on-one and that was how he got his sack. He also got some pretty incredible run stops. So Ivan Pace, still very awesome and very impactful in a way that Kamu Grugier-Hill can't keep up with. But boy, if you just need a guy to take a couple of snaps, he was that guy. And I think what it allowed them to do was keep Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace a little fresher down the stretch, because you could put in 54 and give them a couple off. Hey, go get some water, take the rest of this series off. We'll have you back out there, right? And you can kind of do that rotation. It's a nice thing to have. I don't think it was unlocked the key to the defense or anything like that. There was a lot more going on that had nothing to do with Ivan Pace that the Vikings did very well. But boy, sure doesn't hurt to have a guy that's just popping into the backfield every once in a while. Luke Brown's Volsburner says, it seems QBs check out to a blitz beater and whoever drops gets a hand on the ball very often, such as Van Ginkel's pick. Is this not something covered in film? So yeah, sure. It's often covered in film. But the thing about it, these sim pressures, the way Flores designed, the way anybody designs them, but Flores is good at it, is that you never know who exactly is dropping off and where they're dropping to. And the only way to really know that for sure is to wait for them to hit that drop. But then the coverage has completely developed and declared, and maybe you've missed out on an opportunity. So for Van Ginkel's pick, what Rodgers was trying to do was essentially beat Van Ginkel to the throwing window. And Van Ginkel just dropped at either an angle or at a speed that Rodgers wasn't expecting. But the question of was this covered in film, that should be covered in film because Van Ginkel was not dropping to anywhere exotic. He was dropping to the same hash mark landmark that he always does. So Rodgers should have understood that that's where Van Ginkel was going once he saw that sim, once he saw that 43 was backing off. He should have known where he was backing off to based on film study. And to throw that interception anyway is a very bad mistake. And don't take my word for it. Rodgers basically, I mean, he didn't go in any detail, but he also said, no, that one was just a bad mistake. That wasn't a, ooh, I got or anything. Like, he should have known better than that. If that's what you're trying to get at, then yes, they should know better than to just throw directly at him. But I think it was also a greedy thing of, well, that guy is an edge rusher. He's a 3-4 outside linebacker. You know, he's measured in his sack totals. I can probably just hurry up my footwork and throw it before he gets to that window, basically trying to take advantage of D-line and coverage, right? Like, that's the weak link in the coverage structure is going to be 43. Or, a guy with a number in the 90s. But he wasn't fast enough, and Van Ginkel was faster than he thought, so he didn't get away with it. But I think he was kind of I don't think it was he just didn't see. I think it was, ooh, I can get it by him. Oops, no, I can't. Ryan asks, Naylor played over half the snaps in offense, but only ran cardio. Why is that? What's his nickname, dude? He's speedy. He's speedy, runs clearouts, man. That's how it goes. He also just couldn't get separation. Just like the whole wide receiver room got absolutely smoked. The wide receiver room was probably the worst room in the Vikings on Sunday morning in London, which is wild because that has absolutely been our best room for years. With Jefferson and Thielen going straight into Addison, Diggs, all that. That it's crazy that the wide receiver room was the one that like took the worst L, but it did. Yeah, I mean, you can see it right on the tape. Guys were just clamped up. Been Worse asks, I'm a Vikings fan, born and raised in New England. My wife of 5 years was a lifelong Patriots fan. Around 2022, she fully renounced her Patriots fandom and became a Vikings fan. Am I wrong for letting her do this? Yes. You shouldn't have let her do that. You should have protected her from that fate. It's like if you are like a bad drug addict and, somebody else wants to get into it and you know that it's going to ruin their life as much as it's ruined yours, but you're still like, yeah, get in here. Let's do this heroin. Then yeah, that kind of like you could have made her life better, but you chose not to. So yes, you are a bad person for that. That said, Patriots fan until 2022. I don't know, man. Like born and raised Patriots fan, and the second they're bad, she's jumping ship. I don't know. I don't know if you could have stopped her. Globe asks, how scared should I be about the fact that our offense has the most turnovers in the entire league? Yeah, man, pretty scared. That's not great, and I don't think it's going to stop. And I don't think they're going to stop getting takeaways either. I think they're just really good at that, and we're going to have all these games where the turnover margin is like 2-3. But as long as the defense can keep pace, I guess we can keep doing it. But yeah, they got to get a handle on that. And Anonymity Rando says, what are some of your coldest takes that you were dead wrong about, and what did you learn from them? I get this question every once in a while, and I really like I really like it when it comes around. For a long time, one of the funniest stories that I had was my very first Locked On Vikings episode. When I first joined Locked On, was defending John DeFilippo the day before he got fired. My first episode, he got fired on a Monday morning, and the Sunday night before that Monday morning, I was recapping the game that they had lost right before he got fired, and I was like, well, I don't know if it's his fault, and then he got fired. Fantastic stuff, right? I probably have to come up with a more recent one now. I didn't like the Brian O'Neill pick when they made it. Pretty wrong there. When it comes to draft takes for me, anything before 2023 was like a very unserious process. I was basically just parroting what Dane Brugler said. It wasn't really my opinion. And I sort of regret that, but also like I just didn't know. I didn't know a lot about the draft, so I outsourced it to people that I felt knew more than me, and that was a humble thing for me to do, so I don't really regret that approach, but I don't really look at like my 2019 draft opinions as like serious. Like they were what I knew how to put together at the time, but I'd like to think I've learned and grown a little since then. And that said, the one I'm going to say is that I didn't like the Christian Darrisaw pick. And what I learned from the Christian Darrisaw pick, so the reason I didn't like it is because I didn't get it. I was not familiar with his game, as it were. His game looks funky. It is weird. He stands up, like his posture doesn't look right a lot of the time. He finishes guys in a way that can easily be mistaken for being lazy, just like aesthetically. And that happened to him during the recruiting trail a lot. So it's not just me. And a lot of the recruiters that dealt with him when he was first going to go to Virginia were concerned about this, the finishing issues. You might remember that being a thing. Very funny in hindsight, because he could just absolutely throws guys into the stratosphere now, right? Some of it was energy conservation on a bad knee that we knew about, and that was one of the possibilities, but we couldn't confirm. So we had to say, well, we're still worried about it. That would be a good excuse, but we don't know if it's true. It turns out it was. And there were all these things, but really the way that Darrisaw plays, the nonchalance with which he plays, is actually some galaxy brain stuff that he does that only he can get away with because of the kind of athlete that he is. He would play very willing to let an edge rusher get past him, and then he would flip his hips and move him upfield past the quarterback. I didn't like that. I thought that was kind of, you're barely holding it together against ACC pass rushers. NFL pass rushers are going to turn the corner on you. But what I didn't understand is that he was jump setting to take away a lot of that horizontal space and force the edge rusher to go upfield before he wanted to take him away from the path that the edge rusher wanted to be on, and then flipping his hips and getting up and over was pretty easy. Darrisaw absolutely still does all of that in the NFL, and that's because it isn't a, by the seat of your pants, hanging on by a thread way to play like I thought it was. It is a strategy to ruin the pathing. I did not understand those nuances at all. I learned them because of Darrisaw, because I read an article about Darrisaw explaining that, and about somebody who is his high school coach basically saying, yeah, that's always what he was doing and that it was smart. And now I understand that specifically because of being wrong there. I think being wrong about the draft is one of your best opportunities to learn something new. What was it about this guy that tricked me that I didn't see? And I think that's a great opportunity to grow. All right, I will see you all tomorrow for probably some defensive analysis, because we talked offense a lot today, but whatever it is, I feel like, and you can't do anything about it. I'll see y'all tomorrow, and as always, Skull.